Should marijuana users in Delaware be allowed to use guns? The Police Chiefs Association says no. And finding the next leaders in the state. This is the Delaware Way. Welcome to the Delaware Way. I'm Larry Menti. One of the big issues in the state, well, in states across the country, is the legalization of recreational marijuana. Can it happen in Delaware? I'm going to introduce you to two people who have some concerns. Bill Bryson is the chief of police, and Jeff Horvath is the executive director of the Delaware Police Chiefs Council. Thank you both for being here. I really appreciate it. Let's start with something that's been making headlines recently. So you're saying that if marijuana is legalized, that marijuana users should not own guns. Is that right?
Well, actually, I'm saying marijuana users by federal law can't own or possess guns if they use or possess marijuana.
Is that being enforced anywhere?
Not that I'm aware of.
Right. So again, you want the federal law enforced so that they can't.
We aren't pushing for the feds to come in and enforce the law. We would like a notation on the driver's license so that when you go to buy a gun, let's say you elect to be a purchaser or user of marijuana, there would be a notation on your driver's license or your state ID that would allow you to buy the marijuana in the state of Delaware if it becomes legal. But then when you go to buy a rifle or a handgun, it protects you from breaking federal law, because you could be arrested if they decided to, and it protects the gun dealer from selling you a gun when you are technically a person prohibited under federal law.
Isn't a little bit of this moot because that law hasn't been enforced?
Well, a lot of that remains to be seen on what the new Attorney General or Attorney General Sessions is going to do now. He's drawing back on some of the decisions that were made under the Obama administration and is talking about enforcing federal law in states that have legalized it.
And we don't want to say that it's never enforced. You would have to ask ATF that question. I'm sure it is enforced in some cases. I don't think people are actively checking gun purchaser applications, the paperwork that you fill out, and then going and checking and see if the person is a user of illegal drugs.
No, I know that in Colorado they weren't enforcing it. I know that that is the case there. I guess let me take the devil's advocate role. Let me talk about the advocates of marijuana, what they would say. They'd say a couple of things, and I want to get you both to respond to this. They make an argument about traffic safety, where they say that the people that are marijuana are actually safer drivers because they drive slower and they're more careful because they're a little bit more paranoid when they're smoking marijuana. I would think that they'd make the same argument about gun ownership, that they would be less likely to use a gun because they're on marijuana and it sedates them.
They've made that argument about driving safer, but the statistics in Washington and Colorado have proven that's not true. They're more likely to be involved in an accident.
And when it comes to guns?
There's really no studies involving guns at this point.
So you're kind of flying blind then?
Well, if you're not safer driving using marijuana, I don't know how you could be safer firing a handgun at target shooting or anything of that nature.
Which brings up an interesting point, because there are laws against drunk driving and there are laws against driving under the influence. Are you making the same argument then against someone that drinks alcohol? They shouldn't buy a gun either?
Alcohol is not a federally prohibited substance, so I can't make that argument.
So you're basing this entire argument on a federal law that's not being enforced?
Correct. However, the federal government has the ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, has redone the firearms transaction record and made it clear that even if it's legal in the state you're purchasing the weapon, it's still legal to purchase federally.
So this is interesting. So you're really waving a red flag. You're saying this potentially could be a big problem very quickly and it needs to be addressed now.
So, yeah.
But your position on it is that we should adhere to the federal law at this point?
I think you have to. States aren't supposed to pass, number one, no state is supposed to pass a law that is less restrictive than federal law. But Colorado, Washington, Alaska, other states have done that. I don't know why the federal government has chosen to let that happen, but they have. Delaware is now talking about passing the same law, which is in violation of federal law. And I think as a protection for the gun dealers and the citizens, it would be just an extra step to hopefully prevent a person who uses or possesses illegal drugs, including marijuana, from purchasing a handgun or a rifle.
What I'm not sure of, I guess, is how do you enforce this? How is that enforceable? Do you have to, if you use marijuana, sign up, get on a list?
Our theory was if you were going to be a legal user of marijuana in Delaware, you would have a notation on your driver's license indicating that you're a legal user. That allows you to purchase in Delaware, but that also notifies a gun dealer that they're not selling to someone that should not be possessing a firearm. So it protects the gun dealer too, because they're technically in violation of federal law for selling that weapon as well.
So that means that any legislation that has passed says there has to be a list that you're using marijuana even if it's legal. I don't think that doesn't exist except for medicinal purposes. That doesn't exist in the other states that have passed recreational marijuana.
Our thought was, I'm an organ donor, so I went to motor vehicle, and when I renewed my license, I elected to become an organ donor, and it's notated on my driver's license. I could elect at that time to be a legal user of marijuana in the state of Delaware if we legalize it. And then instead of having a little heart for the organ donor, you have another symbol or indication for the gun dealer when you present your state ID or driver's license. He looks at it, he says, I can't sell you this weapon because it's a violation of federal law, and I'm a federally licensed gun dealer.
I would think the pushing back on that in Delaware, if you were to propose that, is that people that feel like that they're going to now use a substance that, if it's passed, would be legal. This would be against their civil liberties. That you're now stigmatizing them. You're now putting them on a list, and a government list, and saying they're users.
We're not proposing that we maintain a list of those users.
What else would it
only
be?
that there is a notation to indicate to the dealer that they are a user.
That wouldn't be listed anywhere else?
At motor vehicle.
It may be.
Yeah.
We're not proposing that they maintain a list of those people. I don't think they maintain a list of organ donors.
Would it be on their license, you're
Yes.
saying? So now if you stop someone and they now have this on their license, aren't you more apt to give them a test?
You have to have probable cause to give a test to anybody.
Wouldn't the probable cause be that on their license saying that they're a
absolutely not.
user?
No. I mean, if I know that, if I see you come out of a liquor store, that doesn't mean I can pull you over and give you tests. I have to have a reason to do that. It's just like if you elect, I see that you elected to be a marijuana user. Okay, if there's no problem with your speech, your driving, anything that you've done to set off an alarm to the police officer, he can't do anything about that.
So you see no problems with putting that on. You don't think that anybody would be stigmatized, especially by the police.
I think a lot of people aren't going to like it.
Yeah, no,
but
that's what I'm saying.
That's pretty obvious. But I think it protects them from breaking a federal law, and it protects the gun dealers who are federally licensed gun dealers to sell the gun.
What do you think the chances of this are? I mean, do you have legislators that are now saying, you know what, you're right about this, and we're going to back you up?
No, and it's not happening in any other state. So we know it's a long shot, but we're hoping that there's something that protects the federal law and makes people realize that Delaware is starting to do everything we can to uphold that federal law.
It just seems crazy that ATF is telling you, even if this is legal in your state, you can't buy a gun. But nobody is taking any step to try to prevent that from happening. So that was the idea behind it.
They updated their forms after states have legalized it, so they did that for a reason. But we don't see them taking any action yet.
Well, the fact that it's a long shot and the fact that it hasn't happened in other states makes it interesting. And that's why we just spend so much time on it. I'd like you to stick around for another segment if you would. And we want to talk about other potential problems and what could happen in Delaware if recreational marijuana is legalized. When the Delaware Way continues with Chief Bill Bryson and Jeff Horvath, who is the Executive Director of the Delaware Police Chiefs Council. When the Delaware Way continues.